Hey guys, going to do a quick little video to explain how you could answer this question you see on the screen. So if this was the actual test, notice I say suggested reading time 15 minutes, suggested writing time 30 minutes. What that means is in a 45-minute test period, I would spend 15 minutes planning. So think of reading and planning, and then 30 minutes to write. And then you finally have a final 5 minutes to do the cutting and pasting from the Google Doc into the AP exam portal. So in that first 15 minutes, the most important thing is figuring out what this question is asking and what you need to know, or what you already know beforehand about the topic. So what's important to think about here is what is the Enlightenment? And then you're trying to judge how does the Enlightenment continue to influence debates, political and social debates, in what's basically the 1800s. Okay. So if I was on my little planner that I want you guys to print out, what I would do first, and the red is, this would be blank obviously when you have it, but the red would be, I read the prompt and then I start brainstorming, what do I know about Enlightenment? I know that it's something in the 1600s till about 1800. The revolutions that occur in the Atlantic world, the American, the Haitian, the French, the Latin American ones, are caused by the Enlightenment, in part. I know that simultaneously to the Enlightenment is industrialization and other scientific discoveries, and that's partially because the Enlightenment is about reason and logic. Okay? Then I go back and I think, okay, what else do I need to know? I need to know about what is happening politically and socially in the 1800s, so I can then judge the Enlightenment. Part of that is it influencing that. So I know in the 1800s, it's the era of imperialism. So if European or Western powers are spreading into other parts of the world, then it makes sense that a European phenomenon in the intellectual period called the Enlightenment could also spread with those ideas. And then something that I know that you might not know that I'll talk about in a second is two political philosophies emerge in the 1800s about the Enlightenment. Liberals support, conservatives oppose. So before we jump into the documents, I want to talk a little bit more about this, going through a quick little study in the Enlightenment and some of its later effects. So when I talked earlier about liberal and conservative on that last slide, that probably made you think of what I'm showing on the bottom here. Modern political spectrum. People talking about left-wing politics and right-wing politics. In the United States, that usually means liberal or conservative. Conservatives, the Republican Party. Liberals, the Democratic Party. And as you move to the extremes of those philosophies, you go to socialism, communism, and anarchism. And then you go to extremes of conservative philosophy. You go to traditional monarchies, then you have turned to Nazism, or the larger phenomenon of fascism. None of this matters, 20th century philosophy anyways, for the DBQ you're writing. But this idea of liberal and conservative does. Okay? So liberalism is going to be a development that springs from the supporters of the Enlightenment. Conservatives are the opponents. So what was the Enlightenment? The Enlightenment was a philosophical movement that believed in the natural rights of man. They thought that religious wars in the previous era were against reason and logic, so they wanted just toleration of religion. Reason was prime, superstitions and traditions were not. Science was primary, and then politically, it was about the balance of power between the government and those being governed. The Enlightenment really emerged from the earlier Renaissance. Belief of humanism, power, and ability of man and reason. The individual is more important than the group, and then reviving the Greek concepts of citizenship. So as we move through the eras after the Enlightenment in the 1800s, you'll have emergence in other political movements liberalism and conservatism. That we'll talk about on the next slide. So after the French Revolution, which was the embodiment of Enlightenment ideas about the rights of man, progress over the past, kind of obliterating the past for this future, you'll have two political opponents, guys that are called liberals, that believe in basically the philosophies of the American and French Revolution: legal equality, civil liberties, representative government. They're opposed by those who want a traditional rule, monarchy, in all its various forms along the planet Earth. Okay? They didn't believe, conservatives, in freedom for all. They thought that aristocrats, traditional elites, and then everything a traditional elite was based on: agriculture over modern industry, social privileges for the nobility, those should be maintained. Because at the same time this stuff is happening, political evolutions, you have the Industrial Revolution and all that, it's changing. New urban-centered economy with new urban elites who are wealthy but not noble and are vying for power. So conservatives wanted to return to the past. In religion, they wanted old religion, not new. Liberals aren't a-religious. They just don't believe in one religion being more important. So in England and France, where the Enlightenment emerges, and had been there longest, liberals evolve into focusing on these things: protecting civil liberties, controlling or defining the power of the monarchy against the electorate, and they're expanding that electorate so the middle class, and then later the lower class, usually the middle class in the first half of the 19th century, have political rights. In the rest of the world, liberal ideas, meaning Enlightenment ideas, take these forms. There should be freedom for the nation. So if you're a Pole, your people are part of the Russian Empire. So you want a Poland. If you're Greek, your nation is still part of the Ottoman Empire. So you want a Greece. And if you're German, you don't have a one nation. There's 30 some odd German states, so you want some German unity. In Italy, there are multiple Italian states, so they want that freedom. So nationalism is a prime vehicle for these liberal ideas: freedom for a people. Economically, the idea is you want economic freedom, economic liberty. So you don't want enterprise controlled by the government. You want the removal of all trade barriers. If you think about the American Revolution, that's primarily what it was about. Yes, it's about it's about political representation, but that political representation is because they wanted to remove trade restrictions, remove mercantilism. So liberals were the greatest early supporters of capitalism in the industrial system. Conservatives opposed this because a conservative back then wants traditional agricultural society controlled by the noble elite. Now, the irony of all this is today's conservatives, not then, not the 1800s conservative, but today's conservative, this economic principle of free enterprise, that's their greatest thing. So today's conservatives are the liberals of the 1800s. Okay. Also emerging off of the Enlightenment are other movements about freedom and rights: abolition, freedom of slaves, and then the suffrage movements to expand political rights to the working class and then to women. Those also emerge in this same period of the 1800s. Another thing that emerges is a little extreme version of liberalism, and little is probably a misnomer, but a great extreme, looking at the only way that the working class could achieve liberty was in struggle, because they believed that all of human history is socialism. It was really the history of class struggle, the upper classes trying to keep the lower classes down. And in this era, in the 1800s, socialists believed that the government and big business were allies against the common people. So if there was this monopoly of power between the state and business, the socialist believes that the only way to break that monopoly is if the people own the means of production. The people own industry. Because if people own industry, then the people will own the state. So this was supposed to be a gradual evolutionary process to many socialists. They thought they could vote their way in, socialist parties gaining power. But there was a subset of socialists, later called Marxists, that thought that this had to become an immediate evolution through a radical revolution. And this branch of socialists will first come to power in the Russian Revolution of 1917. So you might be thinking, what in the world is he talking about? I thought this was a DBQ about how does the Enlightenment continue, or to what extent does the Enlightenment influence political and social debates? All of this stuff here, these are all outcomes or effects of original Enlightenment thought. And the timeline I have here are major events that are happening in the time frame of the question that you can think about in their relationship to the Enlightenment. So, for example, the Meiji Revolution. That is the overthrow of the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan, where traditional military rule is replaced by a centralized empire based on a constitution with an emperor. But it's also about modernizing and opening Japan up to science and industry. So is the Meiji Revolution related to Enlightenment? In a sense, yes, because it's about progress. It's about reason and science, modernization, not about the past. It's a liberal revolution in Japan. So thinking back to our question then, to what extent does Enlightenment continue to influence political and social debates? You want to kind of look at these documents to come to see whether they support Enlightenment ideas or do they oppose them. Because in the DBQ for this year's exam, with only 5 documents, you're probably just going to have 2 routes to take, 2 ways to argue the extent. They either do or they don't, a lot or a little. That's the extent to which, right? Support the Enlightenment or they oppose it. So go through looking at these documents with that in mind. Support or opposition. Okay? So I'm going to put 2 things up here so you can side by side look. I think I'm too small here, so let's get a little bigger. So looking at document 1 first. Maybe you want to go into this thinking, support or oppose the Enlightenment. So when I say on the right side, is basically what this document is saying, is that German Jews, and Jews historically had been a persecuted minority in Europe in the 1800s. In German states, they're beginning to achieve some rights. They're being emancipated, which means freedom. They're being given legal freedoms. They're avoiding religious persecution. So what's happening to Jews is definitely in accordance to what the Enlightenment would believe: religious toleration, civil liberties. So that document is supportive of, is supporting Enlightenment ideas, so a continued influence. So remember the way I want you guys to do this first. I want you to go through the right side analysis first. How does it document to the question? Then go back and think sourcing. And yes, this is all happening in 15 minutes. So are you going to be writing down as much stuff as me? Probably not. But this is so you can look and compare to your own. Second document, there's the Japanese scholar. Inside this document, he's discussing that all classes are equal in the first paragraph, and in the second paragraph, he talks about how the middle class, which is the new class in this era, is the class that brings about economic and technological progress. So that idea of progress and equality of classes also shows support of Enlightenment ideas. So moving very quickly to number 3. You see a picture of a woman on a horse charging against a battlement. It's in French, so you're saying, I don't know what the heck this means. So you have to look at the source line and then the little annotation at the bottom. She's carrying a banner that says the rights of women, and then it says she's a leading woman for women's suffrage with the right to vote. And she's attacking the Bastille and the rights of men. If you don't know what the Bastille is, like on this year's exam, you could Google it real quick. And the Bastille was a French prison of the monarchy back in the day. And when the French Revolution begins, the people rise up and storm it, overthrow it. And today, Bastille Day in France is like their 4th of July. So what we're seeing here is a woman attacking the old way, the rights of man, but not women. So what you got to think is, what does this say? Is this saying that this is a good thing? Is this an Enlightenment ideal about equality, support, or is it about how this is not a good thing and they're opposing it? I think in this document we can see both. I think if you take it just on its face value, it shows women fighting against rights for only men. So you could say it supports. But if you notice that this is a satire, then maybe they're being satirical. They're making fun of this movement. By the way, they caricature the woman with a giant head and with a horse. She's charging with a plume, a quill, and it's like the pin of the back in the day. So is she going to defeat a fortress with a pin? See the man on top kind of jeering down at her? So maybe they're satirizing this movement as being hopeless or fruitless. So this document could go either way. You could use it to say Enlightenment ideas continue to influence because people are supporting their spread, or these Enlightenment ideas are being opposed. Then we did the 4th document. It's an Ottoman journalist. This one's longer. It's harder to read. But notice how these documents all have kind of 2 paragraphs. If you can kind of interpret them paragraph by paragraph, then I think you'll have an easier way than trying to think of the main idea of the whole thing. So the first paragraph shows how this author believes that the Islamic world needs to, as it says there, spread the sunlight of modern science and civilization. In other words, the Enlightenment, the new ideas need to come to the Islamic world to bring it into the sun. So we support. But then the second paragraph shows that in the Islamic world, there's a lot of opposition, especially among Muslim scholars, to what they think of as Christian ideas from the West. So the second paragraph could show that there is significant opposition in the Muslim world to the Enlightenment. So this could be one that goes either way. Lastly, Qing Dynasty. You should know right away when you're thinking about Qing Dynasty, that's China. China is a Neo-Confucian country, especially under dynasties. And Neo-Confucianism is about tradition, hierarchy, past ideas, influencing the present. And then when you read, this paragraph talks about how you should rise up against monarchs, and the second paragraph talks about how individual liberty destroys social relationships and a state because no one would do what they were supposed to do. So this one is clearly a paragraph that opposes the Enlightenment. So if I was now thinking, all right, what's my argument going to be? It looks like I've got document 5 that is definitely opposing Enlightenment ideas, and then I compare it with parts of 4 and parts of 3. And then my support, I know 1 and 2 are supportive of Enlightenment ideas. You could talk about how 3 could be, and you could talk about how parts of 4 could be. So I see more documents, 4 or 5, that show support, and then 3, 4, and 5, 3 or 5 that show opposition. So in my structure, I'm probably going to do the opposition paragraph first, after the thesis and everything. Looking at parts of document 5, 4, and 3. And then my support to promotion of continued Enlightenment influence, documents 1, 2, 4, and 3. So that's going to be my basic structure. Okay. But I'm not done with my analysis. I'm go back and quickly look at sourcing. Remember on this DBQ, this year, to get full points for sourcing, you just need to do 2 of the 5 documents. So I won't read all these to you, but you can look at them and talk about all the possible POV, purpose, situation, and audience of these 4 documents. 5 documents, but I think it would be the easiest two to use would be document 4, because in the source line, they tell you the perspective of this Ottoman author. He's a reformist young Turk. You see capitalized young Turk, you know that's a movement. It even tells you that. So I would quickly Google it. And what I would see when I Googled it is the Young Turk movement in the Ottoman Empire sought to modernize it into a constitutional Western-style monarchy, and then therefore become a modern industrial state. Okay? So it's very much like in the Japanese situation, the Meiji Restoration. So this is not trying to throw out the emperor. It's just trying to modernize the sultan and become a modern industrial state to be able to compete against the West. So if I was in my essay thinking of how I would source that, look what I have written here. Trying to say that this author, where am I going with this guy? He's a reformer and member of the Young Turk movement, which sought to modernize the Ottoman government along Western lines. As a reformer, he would support the implementation of Enlightenment ideas to better his nation, and thus would oppose those he labels fanatics that oppose him. Okay? So that would be in my last paragraph. I think it's also easiest to do document 5, because a Qing dynasty court official would have to be a Confucian believer back in the day. So we know Confucians are all about hierarchy, tradition, which is not enlightenment. So what I would say about him is the author is a Qing official, which means he would have to be trained in Neo-Confucian beliefs. These beliefs support a hierarchical, collaborative society that de-emphasizes the individualism supported by the Enlightenment. So I would take those two as the sourcing I would use in conclusion. For the rest of my essay, the context for this is simple. It's explaining what the Enlightenment is and how the Enlightenment spreads across the planet. For my thesis, would be kind of summarizing the groups I've seen, those that oppose and those that support. We already talked about evidence. Document 5, 4, and 3 oppose, based on what we talked about when we looked at the documents. For outside evidence, you can do outside evidence 2 times in the entire paper, you get 2 points. So if I were to look at other examples of people who opposed the Enlightenment in this time period, we look at how Japan was isolated up until the 1850s. If you're isolating and you're opposing the entrance of new ideas, there are movements in Arabia called the Wahhabist movement that sought a return to original Islam and avoiding innovations and avoiding adaptations and specifically avoiding the West. I can think about how conservatism in Europe that we talked about earlier, with the idea is to support traditional monarchy, religion, and the rights of the monarchy. Okay? I need to extend that argument about opposition to Western Enlightenment, ideas of logic and science. I could look at anything later in the 20th, 21st century that said the same ideas, like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, religious fundamentalist movements that seek to avoid science and put religion as primary. I would extend those ideas of opposing the Enlightenment. From my promotion paragraph, I talked about already 1, 2, 4, and 3 could be supporting those ideas. My outside evidence could be things like the Meiji Restoration that I talked about earlier, the modernization and industrialization of Japan, the creation of nations, free, liberty, Germany, attempts at that in the Ottoman Empire, something called the Tanzimat reforms. I could do other things like Greek independence movements, because the Greeks fight off the Ottoman Empire to become independent. So many examples. If I were to extend that argument, I could extend how in the 20th and 21st centuries there's civil rights movements to bring those ideas of freedom to African Americans in the United States, to women in the 70s with the feminist movements, Chicano rights movements, gay rights movements. So the sky's the limit on that question. And notice I don't need a third body paragraph because I've got 2 groups. So That seems like a lot. How am I doing this all in 30 minutes? I've written a ton. You don't have to write this much. This is a planning document. What I'm trying to do here is show you a way to structure your thinking so that this essay is doable and gets all the points in that period of reading and writing. So I hope this helped. What you guys are going to be doing this week after you watch this video is you're going to take a Unit 6 DBQ. You're going to print out the planning doc, plan, and then you actually write the essay this time. And I'll score it so you have an idea of going into the AP exam, how you're doing. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching.